My name's Jeff Nichols. I'm the writer and director of the BIKERIDERS, and these are my guest selects. My first guest select is Goodfellas by Martin Scorsese. It's a film everybody pretty much knows. In college, my junior year at film school, I had two DVDs. One was Fletch by Michael Ritchie, and the other was Goodfellas by Scorsese. And I watched these films countless times. I didn't know at the time what was really getting imprinted on me in terms of Goodfellas. But the thing that most relates to the BIKERIDERS is the story structure. I'm really taken with the fact that Goodfellas isn't plot-driven. It's actually really just about showing a subculture that can be complicated and violent. So the first hour, you're making that romantic, and in the second hour, you're dismantling that and making it very dangerous and very realistic. If you were to say, what's Goodfellas about? You certainly wouldn't say it's about the guys who pulled off the Lufthansa heist. You'd be correct, but that really isn't what that film is. That film is a portrait of a subculture, and it is absolutely what I was attempting to do on the BIKERIDERS. So I mentioned in college I had two DVDs my junior year. Michael Ritchie directed Fletch, and he made a made-for-TV movie that was on HBO called, I never get this title correct, The Positively True Stories of the Alleged Texas Cheerleader Murdering Mom. Holly Hunter and Beau Bridges were in this film. It was based off of a true story. A woman tried to hire her brother-in-law to murder a high school cheerleader that was competing against her daughter.
My family was always family-oriented, and so am I.
Beau Bridges' character in the film records all of the conversations they had about this.
What the hell are you talking about?
You know what I'm talking about.
No, I don't.
And this happened in real life, and they took these recordings and actually turned them into dialogue. And Holly Hunter does a brilliant job.
I told you it's going to be expensive.
I know.
I mean, you just can't go around killing people
I
for
know.
a nickel and dime.
Well, I know that. I know that. But you know, I just don't have that kind of money I can come up with, you know.
I screened this film originally in college. A professor showed it to me because he was trying to show us how real people talk. And the truth is, if dialogue was written the way that real people talk, movies would be terrible. We don't speak in complete thoughts, complete sentences. There's a lot of ums and likes and things just kind of trail off. But what was amazing about this narrative film was that Holly Hunter captured all of the details. Because, I mean, she just kind of memorized them verbatim.
And I just hope that the Heath and the people of Channelview can all look back on this one day and forgive me. Not forget it, but forgive me. And that's all I can ask.
When I was looking at the BIKERIDERS book by Danny Lyon, it's a book of photographs, but it's also a book of interviews. The only text in the book were interviews that Danny recorded with these real people who rode with the Chicago Outlaws in the mid-1960s. Working class people who speak with really thick Chicago accents in a vernacular that is very particular to that place and time. It very much made me think about Michael Ritchie's film, and that this is my opportunity to take this real dialogue and turn it into movie dialogue. Our actors had access to the audio recordings that Danny made back in the 1960s, in the sense that about 70% of the dialogue in the BIKERIDERS is taken verbatim from these real people.
I thought I could change him, you know? Not to be different, but to be, I don't know, like he's wild.
And I'm really proud of how it turned out.
I'm thinking of starting a writing club.
Why? All those clubs do is sit around talking about motorcycles.
That's what we do.
It's hard to talk about a 1960s motorcycle movie without talking about, on one side of things, The Wild One with Marlon Brando, and on the other side, Easy Rider. In Danny Lyon's book of photographs, there was a real man named Johnny.
But you're the man in charge.
I'm Johnny.
It is supposedly true that this guy was watching Marlon Brando in The Wild One on TV when he got the idea to start the Chicago Outlaws. I thought that was kind of fascinating because we're making this bigger statement about subcultures and how they're reflected in society and how they, over time, kind of morph and become a shadow of themselves or a projection of themselves. And the idea that you would have this guy watching Marlon Brando and that being the inspiration for his club, I was pretty fascinated by it. The Wild One has one of the greatest lines ever when it comes to reducing the idea of the rebel mindset.
Hey, Johnny, what are you rebelling against?
What do you got?
And I think that's why that film is important, honestly, is what it was doing in the 1950s for people. From an aesthetic standpoint, okay, not great. You open the film with Marlon Brando on a fake motorcycle with rear projection behind him, kind of the opposite of the approach we wanted to take on our film, but you also have to give it the context of its time. This is a film coming out of the studio system in the 1950s about a biker gang and about a rebellious part of society, and they're the main characters. To me, even though it was made in the 50s, it signals the beginning of kind of 1960s counterculture cinema.
The idea is to have a ball. Now, if you're gonna stay cool, you got to whale. You got to put something down. You got to make some jive. Don't you know what I'm talking about?
And the other film that is on my list that is connected to ours is Easy Rider. You know, what happened between those two films? It's 15 years of difference, but what happened in those 15 years in terms of society and culture and everything else? And that's really what our movie's about. It shows the shift between the greasers that are represented in The Wild One.
Hey, Pops, give me one of those crazy beers, will you, man?
And the drug culture and whatever else is represented in Easy Rider. Just look at the aesthetics of those two films. It's hard to find two films with greater differentiation in aesthetics that are both technically biker films.
I wouldn't waste my time in a square like you. What I want to knock myself out for.
A lot of motorcycle scenes in films, especially present-day films, are just action sequences. Jason Bourne gets on the motorcycle, cue the action sequence. And they're amazingly shot, technically. But we didn't really want that. We just wanted to understand the feeling of riding a motorcycle pack. If you look at Easy Rider, I'm pretty sure they were just putting a tripod in the back of a pickup truck and shooting these guys riding around. It's really free. It feels really great.
This is grass. You mean marijuana? Yeah. Lord have mercy, is that what that is?
My fifth film, in terms of inspiration for the Bike Riders, is The Outsiders by Francis Ford Coppola. And I'm going to be really honest, and I don't want to insult anybody, but there's some cheesy stuff in that film. However, there is a 3-minute segment at the beginning of that film that is all set to Gloria by them, Van Morrison's band. And that 3 minutes of Matt Dillon walking around that town, I think are 3 of the greatest minutes of cinema ever put down.
What do you want to do? Nothing legal, man. Let's get out of
When I look at those 3 minutes, it doesn't necessarily advance the story. Really, it's just there to set the tone. It's really just there to set the scene and the environment and the mood. And that's what I fell in love with. And really with the Bike Riders, looking at Danny Lyon's photographs, listening to these interviews, looking at these period motorcycles and hairstyles and clothes and everything else, that's what I wanted to do, was show people a time and a place that gives me a very particular feeling. And those 3 minutes in The Outsiders, I just want to make a whole movie that feels that way. And the Bike Riders is my attempt at that.
So what's the movie about? Cow, Dallas. Huh?
And then my honorable mention is a film by Catherine Bigelow called The Loveless, starring Willem Dafoe. I love Catherine Bigelow. And Near Dark and Point Break, Hurt Locker, these are films that are very important to my development as a filmmaker. And here I find this film, made in the 80s with Willem Dafoe with greased hair riding a big 1960s Harley. It certainly has a kitschiness to it that I guess can feel dated.
Come on, the Billy, can't lose. Probably get you 10 for stride.
But it's a film that aesthetically is in my heart and kind of kissing cousins with the Bike Riders. Thanks for listening. I hope you get to see some of these films, and I hope you watch The Bike Riders when it's released on June 21st.
Some people would rather crash than slow down.